Welcome to My Counselor Live, our first live episode of 2021. Oh my gosh, truthfully, wasn't sure if 2020 would ever end. Can't believe 2021 is already here. Oh my goodness, just so crazy. But today I'm joined by one of our amazing counselors on the team and the founder of MyCounselor.Online, Josh Spurlock. Welcome to the show. I'm Tori, and today I get to introduce you guys to him. And I'm going to just hand it over to you, Josh, let you kind of introduce yourself to the people listening, the people watching, and tell them a bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be out of 2020 and praying for an entirely different kind of year this year, as I think most folks are. But I'm excited to be back with you. It's been a little while since we have shot a video, and so yeah, I'm stoked. So founder of MyCounselor.Online, started the practice a little over a decade ago, and have been continuing to build a really cool team with folks like yourself and the other clinicians that are on the team, and creating resources to support the body of Christ and to be able to encourage folks and in their marriage, with their parenting, with just the anxieties and stressors that a COVID world contains. And yeah, excited to be here with you and talk through some more of that today.
Yes, Josh, you are just so awesome. And you kind of touched on it, but your heart isn't just for our clients and the people that we're, counseling and talking with. Your heart is also just for this family, for this team here at MCO. And it's such a neat experience working here, and being able to pour into people, but also being poured into by, the staff and by the people on the team. So you just do an incredible job just setting that example for all of us, Josh. And I think it's something that I learn a lot from all the time, and I know other people could say the same. So super appreciate you.
I really appreciate that. That's important. Thanks for sharing.
Yes, of course. And I want to talk a little bit, you're on the road. So tell people maybe a little bit about you and your family, what you guys kind of do. What does day-to-day life look like?
Oh my gosh, the Spurlock Shenanigan Roadshow, right? So if folks want to check that out closer, they can check out my Instagram at Talk to Spurlock. I post pictures of our kids and the Airstream and all the crazy places that we find ourselves. But yeah, we've been on the road for a full year this past November. And so that's our November 4th is our nomad anniversary, where we've been kind of nomads traveling about the country. But it's really cool because we get a chance to visit the different offices that the practice has and work on opening new offices for the practice, as well as visit with the partner churches and sending organizations that MyCounselor partners with to provide member care and support to the body of Christ at Broad. And so we kind of bump around all around the country, connecting with folks, having a good time. This time of year, we're hiding out in warmer parts of the country, because when you're house on wheels, why would you not go someplace warm where the kids can play outside and not drive their mother crazy? So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, y'all are kind of living the dream. You see videos like that and really cool like Facebook things of people who are, living in an RV life and kind of traveling the country. And oh my goodness. And the fact that you guys are doing that with your kids is just next level. That has to be a lot some days.
It is, especially for their mother, who's, when the weather's not great, we're living in 240 square feet.
Oh yeah, you want to get them outside.
You got the 6 of us inside a tin can that close quarters. It's rather challenging. So it has its advantages, right?
Yeah.
We're in Orlando this week, and so it's nice and warm versus a frozen wasteland up in other parts of the country. So I'm not sad about that, but it definitely has its challenges as well.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Well, I love just the heart behind that decision to do that. Just that you guys get to travel, you get to pour into ministries and visit all of our different offices. And it's just awesome. So
That's a cool story too. A lot of people who know us, know our family, you would assume that this would be an idea that I would come up with, right? That I kind of have crazy ideas and pursue crazy things. And so wouldn't shock too many people who know us well that I would do this sort of thing. But what's surprising for them to find out is actually Cassie's idea that I didn't suggest it, and I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have told anybody that it was a good idea to take your kiddos and pack them into an RV and travel about the country. That's
I
nuts.
did not expect that.
Yeah, totally right. It's a surprising because Cassie, that's not in character for Cassie, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm the wild one with the kind of crazy ideas. She's in a more steady and kind of rein it in personality. But it goes back to the early part of a lot 2019, and I was just in one of those kind of vision seeking seasons, beginning of the year, just like we're in now. And a lot of folks would be kind of making New Year's resolutions and will be kind of seeking God's face as to what He has in store for them during this year. And I was in one of those seasons, just prayerfully going, Lord, what's 2019 supposed to be about, and what am I supposed to be focused on and spending time towards? And really felt like focusing on recruiting clinicians, opening offices, and partnering with different organizations that we can serve their people through was what I needed to be focused on. And I could read between the lines of that and go, that sounds like travel. Like I'm going to need to be traveling to different locations to recruit clinicians, to meet with different organizations, to open offices. And I have traveled in previous seasons of life quite a bit. And it was a really hard thing for our family for me to be gone a lot. And so I was just, I don't know if you ever argue with God, but every now and then I find
I've never once disagreed with anything that He has placed in my lap.
right. So I found myself one of those moments of not really arguing with God, but just going, man, I don't even know how to talk to Cassie about that. Like to tell her that I think I might be traveling again and being away for chunks of time working on different things. And so I just kind of sat on it. I said, Lord, you're going to have to talk to her about this. I know you don't want us to be in the same place that we have been in other seasons of our life and marriage. And so I'm just trusting you that if this is what you want me to do, you're going to show the way, and you're going to communicate that to her heart, and you'll help us move forward in unity in it, that you'll show us the path. That was, February or so, 2019. Fast forward to June of 19. And Cassie comes to me after a road trip with the kids and says, all right, listen, I got something I need to talk with you about. I'm like, uh-oh, you're making me nervous. And she's like, now hear me out. I'm like, now I'm really getting nervous. And she kind of launches into this pitch where she's like, I think we should move into an RV and travel about the country, opening offices of the practice. Now hear me out. Here's what I'm thinking. And she starts going. And I look at her and go, you're nuts. That's crazy. We have 4 rambunctious children living at home still, and you want to move into a little RV? And she's like, And so we start going back and forth around it. And I got sitting with it. And I go, well, let me tell you what I've been sitting with, since the spring, and I shared with her what I felt like the Lord was putting on my heart. And as we begin to pray, just say, maybe this is that. Maybe this is the Lord doing what I asked for, that He would put it in your heart and show us how to do this in a way that didn't cause me to be away as much and create disconnect in our family. And as we prayed about it, we just felt convinced that that's in fact what the Lord was doing. And that was early July, mid-July. We ordered an Airstream. In November, we moved into it full time.
Wow. Oh, such a cool story. Like that's something that you can tell, your grandkids about years and years from now, when the season of life that you lived in an Airstream with all of you together and traveled the country. Like that is so neat.
Papa Didi and Mimi. That's what our grandkids, we got 7 grandbabies from our
Yes.
other adopted kiddos. And
Yes.
that's our grandparent names, Mimi and Dee
Yes.
Dee.
I know. And that's the coolest story for you to tell them one day, is just all about this season of life that you guys explored as a family.
Cassie wanted my name to be PP, and that she tried to get that Mimi and PP, and I was like, no, that's not going to work for me.
Yeah, that kind of makes me cringe. So I'm
Exactly.
glad we went a different direction.
Come on now.
I'm glad we went a different direction with that. I think that we all collectively, even the people watching, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I knew you would be on my side with that.
Oh man, oh my goodness. Okay, well, we're gonna jump into the episode, but you guys, if you are just now hopping on, welcome to My Counselor Live. I'm Tori, and today I am joined by Josh Spurlock, the founder of MyCounselor.Online, and one of our amazing counselors, just licensed sex therapist, so many amazing things. And we're going to jump into talking about an article that you wrote. So you have a series of articles actually called Better Sex for Women. I want to start by just talking about that. Why did you write Better Sex for Women? Who's it written to? What inspired it?
Yeah, good question. So, as a certified sex therapist, I help a lot of couples dealing with sexual difficulties in the relationship, and have just witnessed over the years how the mindset, attitudes, communications around sex, both in our culture, but also within the church, have really not been reflective of God's heart about sex. And it has really impacted men and women, but especially women, in their sense of sexuality. And the enemy has used that to create a division and disconnect between husband and wife. It's created shame around sexuality for many of the couples that I work with. And there's just a real struggle there and intention, both internally and relationally, around the subject. And so I just really felt the desire to speak to some of the common areas that I have witnessed, seen, in the couples that I have worked with over the years, to be able to address those things and really hopefully shed light from God's perspective and speak truth into those broken places in a way that can bring healing and wholeness, unity between couples, and just really allow that cool part of life that God wired into us to be embraced, enjoyed, and shared with their spouse for the gals out there. So that was really the driving motivator for this series.
Yeah, I love that. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, but I feel like it is so unique to see articles like this and series like this in a Christian environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, sex is God's idea. He thought of it, right? The fact that we are sexual creatures, that we have sexual desire, that we engage and pursue connecting sexually, all of that he thought of, and he wired into our bodies and into the fabric of our society. And so it makes sense that God's people would be the ones talking about sex, but the enemy's been really effective at silencing the church and having us really abdicate our role in communicating God's truth around sex in a way that's been really harmful to us.
Yeah, there's just this culture of shame, I feel like,
Mhm.
within the church around sexuality and sex. And like you said, if anyone should be talking about it, it should be God's people. And so
Yeah.
I love that you are so passionate about this and that you have this whole series on better sex for women, which I think is super, super important. So if you are a woman watching this, after we finish, go check out all of those articles on the website that are just so, so helpful from just a biblical Christian perspective. Better sex for women, so important. And with that, we're going to jump into one of the articles within that series. So this article was called Busyness, Sex Killer. All
Yes.
right. Yes, can attest that being busy and being overwhelmed and always moving is a sex killer. So let's talk about it. Okay, so my question would be, why do we get too busy for sex? Like, why does that even happen?
Totally. Yeah. It's just, I think there's a strategic component on the enemy's part. The enemy's been around for a long time and targeting and tearing down marriages and families, since Adam and Eve in the garden, right? And so there's a lot of well-practiced tools in the enemy's tool set in creating dissension, disunity, disconnect for couples. And in our present day and age, just the pace at which society moves and all of the different opportunities that are available to us that in and of themselves are good things, but we have so many good things that there's no space for Sabbath, there's no space for connecting, there's no space for the healthy rhythms of life that enable us to be ourselves at best. And one of the consequences of that is time-starved relationships that are lacking the amount of face time and quality time engagement that leads to emotional connection and intimacy. And so there's not that closeness and connection that's a part of healthy sexuality. And then there's also just literally difficulty having space to connect at any time other than when we're completely fatigued and exhausted in a way that does not set up sexual experiences to be at their best and creates just a real breakdown.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see a lot of couples, in counseling. And so how common would you say that this is in marriage? I mean, is this common?
Yeah, I think, probably somewhere around 1 in 1 couples probably struggle with this, right? That is 100% that at one level or another. I can't think of a single couple that I've ever worked with that there wasn't the reality of how busyness impedes on the quality of their connection with each other.
Yeah.
Like oftentimes it's layered with other things that are in the mix also, and that may not be the only thing, but it's one of the factors that really are exacerbating and making more difficult the other challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, I feel like I know what you're going to say to this, but can it be fixed? Is this a fixable issue in
I,
marriage?
I'm going to say no,
Hmm.
which is probably not what you were expecting.
That wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting you to be like, yes, of course. Like,
Yeah, I think it's more something that has to be managed, right? That there's not a fix in the sense that we're going to do this or we're going to implement that and we're never going to struggle with this again. Like that's like would be nice and be, really great, but in reality, that's just not reality. That we're not likely to completely take apart the way society operates in such a way that jobs aren't demanding, parenting isn't demanding, that we're not overwhelmed with different things vying and asking for our time and attention. Like we're going to continually be bombarded by things that are begging for our attention and focus and for us to spend time in. And so there's some strategies that we can talk about in terms of how to manage that reality, but it's not going to fix it. Instead, it's going to be something we have to continually keep top of mind if we're going to stay in a healthy place. And we're probably going to find ourselves in seasons where we're doing really great with it and we're feeling good about the connection, and then seasons where we're maybe out of balance in some ways and start to feel the effects of that and have to go, oh yeah, I need to get back to these things that I know.
right. So speaking of, managing instead of fixing, right? So you
Mhm.
mentioned at the beginning of the article, time wasters. So first question would just be, what maybe are some examples of time wasters? And the second question would be, how do we set practically boundaries with those things that waste our time?
Yeah. Let me start with saying that, it's normal to struggle with this, right? We said it 1 in 1 couples struggle with this, and it's normal for you to return to struggling with it, right? That
Yeah.
it's not like There's no sense in beating yourself up if you find yourself in this time-starved relationship place, this kind of sex-starved dynamic because life's been crazy and we just haven't been able to connect. Like the enemy likes to shame us. He's the accuser of the saints. He likes to kind of put us in this hole, and it's not helpful. You can just go, this is a normal struggle that normal, healthy couples who have a great relationship struggle with. And it's just something that we need to be reminded of as something to give attention to so that we can be intentional about caring for this aspect of our relationship and life together. So that's the first thing I want to say. The last thing anybody watching this needs is, someone whapping you over the head and shaming you because your life is busy and crazy, just like the rest of ours. And this is something Josh has to work on as much as the next person. That my life gets out of balance and crazy, and Cassie and I find ourselves disconnected from all the different things vying for our attention regularly, and have to come back to a focused effort and making space for us. So that's the first thing I would want folks to hear.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. So, practically what boundaries could be set in maybe avoiding that happening or just managing it when it starts to happen, and how do we recognize it, and how do we set those boundaries?
Yeah. So first thing, we got to be open with each other, right? That it's normally the way this goes is one spouse or the other will kind of come to the awareness before the other that, hey, things don't feel good, right? Like, I'm missing you. I feel disconnected.
I feel like I've had this exact conversation with my husband before.
Exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
Right. And same for him to me. Sometimes I don't pick up on it. I'm just go, go, go. And he's like, I feel so disconnected from you.
Yeah. He's like, hey, remember me? We used to date. There's that longing for connection.
Yeah.
And we turn to our other and we make a bid for connection, right? We're like, hey, I'm missing you. And two thoughts on that are, one, how we approach the bid, right? Because we can approach the bid in what we call a protest stance, and we're mad that we're disconnected, right? And we're like, you haven't been making time for me, right? Which
very like, it's your fault, not mine.
Exactly. Which at least is defensiveness, right? Because when somebody comes at us like this, the natural kind of response to that is kind of to pull back defensively like that. Not helpful. So it's so much better to be able to go sharing what we've been feeling in the sense of, I miss you. I'm feeling disconnected. And I feel like I need more time with you and around you and engagement with you. And the other side of that is to be receptive. Instead of going, well, you this, you that, you're on Facebook, you're blah, da, 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 all the different things that we can kind of respond defensively, to hear that through the lens of love. Oh, you like me. Oh, you miss me. That you want connection, and there's a sadness there about the disconnect. Okay. So that we can turn towards each other and look at the problem, the disconnect, whatever that is, as a team, right? Link arms and go, yeah, I want to feel connected with you too. And I like you too and enjoy being with you. And yeah, as I step back and pause for a moment, I can feel the distance there too. Let's make a plan. What can we do to get out of this space? And that sets the tone, that gets us doing teamwork. And then we can start looking at some of the things that maybe have gotten us there. But there's some common things. I mean, I bet you and everybody out there, having not read the article, can probably identify like at least a handful of things that are on that list, right? Like, what's the top one off in your mind? What comes to mind when thinking about the time sucks for your relationship.
Oh man, I think, and this is maybe weird, but I think of cleaning. I think that, sometimes I get so sucked in, like I have to clean the whole house, and then I'm just stressed out trying to clean.
Yeah.
And we have our whole night to hang out together, and
Mm-hmm.
I spend it cleaning instead of spending time with him.
Yeah, I think that's such an awesome example because it's an example of something that's not inherently bad, which is initially the things that maybe we're inclined to think about, of, big, maybe going Netflix or getting lost in Netflix or YouTube and, spending hours watching TV, right? That's kind of the obvious target
It's
that's out
sitting
there.
side by side on our phones for an hour and a half.
Right, exactly. Where we're sucked in a device and we're there, but we're not there with each other. Like we're each in our own little worlds, even though we're sitting on the same couch, right? Those are things that people kind of readily identify and like, yeah, that's probably not good. And that, but there's the things that we don't readily think of that are things that are good, but they're not necessarily the best thing, right? And there's this Mary and Martha kind of dynamic that we see happen, right? Where what Martha was up to was not bad. Like she's serving, right? She's serving the king. She's serving Jesus and the disciples that are there. She's preparing the meal. She's doing these different things that are hospitality, that are service to the king. Like they're good and valuable things, but they weren't the best thing in that space, right? That Mary had the idea of the presence and being in the king's presence and sitting at his feet and engaging and that connecting with him was the opportunity that Martha was missing in that. And that's exactly what can happen to all of us, right? We're engaging in things that are necessary and that are important and that are valuable and they're good. And yet maybe at the expense of the best thing, that connection with our spouse, that the cleaning will probably wait and it will probably won't have to condemn the house, or burn it down to the ground and start over from scratch. It'll probably tide over. The opportunity to connect while we have it, or to respond to a bid for that attention and that connection from our spouse. Those are precious moments that we want to not trade out, not miss the best because of the good.
Yeah. And it's something so key, in all of that is quality time, right? So that is so key in connecting with our spouse.
Right.
Not just time, not just sitting together side by side on the couch on their phones,
Yes.
but quality time.
Yes.
And I wondered if you could kind of expand on the tomato plant analogy that you give in your article.
Yes, absolutely. So I don't know where this idea came from. Sometimes I have these analogies and word pictures that I just think, I won't blame it on the Holy Spirit, but it's me in the course of a session going, how can I communicate this idea in a way that makes sense or connect right? And I'll be like, it's like a tomato plant.
I feel like plant analogies just always work. They always work. I've never once had
this is why VeggieTales
a plant analogy
right?
didn't tell me clearly what I was trying to figure out.
Right. That's why VeggieTales wins at the end of the day, right? Plant analogies get the job done.
It's true.
So the tomato plant analogy, I spent a lot of time in Missouri and in the Midwest and growing gardens in the summertime. And, tomato plants need a ton of water in order to survive, right? In order to flower, be fruitful, and grow and delicious plum tomatoes to enjoy. We eat them like apples, like plucking them in a salt shaker out in an ice cream bucket in the garden and just kind of eat them right off the vine. But you have to water them in order to. Everything else can be perfect condition-wise, right? You can have a great starter plant, you can have great sun exposure, soil, fertilizer, everything can be perfect. You can build a fence around it to keep, critters from chewing on them. But if you don't water it, it's not going to grow. It's not going to thrive. And it's not like you can dump 100 gallons of water on it in the beginning of the season and then not water it the rest of the year, right? We'll just put a whole bunch of on it right now. Won't need to water, and that it won't work. And it's not like there's something called super wet water, right? That we can somehow like just use this much water, but because it's super duper quality, super wet water, and that we only need this much of it in there. The plant requires regular, steady watering in order to grow because the ground can only soak up so much at a time. Everything else feeds up and rolls off. And the plant is going to need watering again a couple of days later, right? So the imagery reflects in the relationship and the reality that the maybe myth or misconception that we take vacations a few times a year and we have all this time together where it's undivided attention and we can dump 100 gallons on it at once. That kind of tie us through to the next vacation or trip or thing that we can do, even though we don't see each other. We're just like two ships passing in the night in between those times. It doesn't work. I mean, vacations are great, fabulous, and that, but the ground can only soak up so much at once. And a couple of days later, it's going to need watered again. Or there's this myth of, we don't have very much time together, but we just make it really good in the time that we do have, right? Like it's super high quality. And so even though we only have this much time together, it's about quality, not quantity. And that, right? Which is a myth also. That's not to say that quality doesn't matter. It's to say that no amount of quantity or no amount of quality is going to make a tomato plant not need to be watered again in a couple of days. It just doesn't work like that. Our relationships, like a tomato plant, need that regular watering in order to be healthy and thrive and be fruitful. And it doesn't take very long without regular watering. And the leaves start to shrivel, the flowers fall off, the thing, just shrivels up and dies. And relationally, we can get to that place where we're going through the motions, but the connection between us has shriveled up and died.
Yeah, no, that's such a good analogy. And, you talk about this quality time and how important it is. And one of the things that you touch on in the article is being able to maybe even like schedule it, right? Like scheduling out, like, when are we going to have quality time? When are we going to do this? When are we going to have sex? My question going into, scheduling time to have sex, does that take away from being present, from being spontaneous? I mean, does it make it less special? Are we just doing it as a duty?
Yes, that is the automatic 100% of the time question that they have, right? Like that sounds awfully mechanical, right? Like that takes away the spontaneity. That just seems weird. Sometimes guys are even like, I don't even think it could work. Like, I don't, does the mechanics even work like that? Like you could kind of plan it on demand or that sort of thing. What in the world? And the truth is that we plan for things that are important and things that are valuable, right? Like you don't just like randomly brush your teeth and whenever you think to do that, right? Or whenever it's convenient. And I mean, I'm thinking you probably have a pretty regular schedule for brushing your teeth, right? Because, your teeth falling out of your head is not what you want. And so you at regular scheduled intervals engage that. Eating, pretty important to nourish the body. We plan for it. Does that mean there's no spontaneity in our eating? Does that mean it's the same mundane meal every day? Does that mean that we can't look forward to dinner time because I had dinner yesterday, and that, or just knowing that dinner is coming completely takes the joy of eating away? And then
so true.
Right? We plan for things that are important. And listen, if you are, your husband is like cooking for you, right, in dinner one night, and he's cooking your favorite dish, right, that thing that you love every time he makes it for you, and that he tells you, as you leave the house in the morning, hey, I'm cooking tonight, get home, fill in the blank there. And that, are you dreading that all day? Are you I wish you wouldn't have told me that. It's just taking the spontaneity away from it. I'm not going to enjoy it at all now.
Oh no, when he walks in the door, I'll give him the skillet. Like, go do it.
Yeah, your mouth is watering all day. You're thinking
I
about
don't have
that.
to do anything. Like,
Right. So you're anticipating it, and that anticipation kind of builds the excitement towards it, right? I mean, as kids, do we, dread or lose the joy of Christmas morning because we know it's coming? No, it doesn't remove the joy and the spontaneity and the excitement around it to know that's coming. In fact, it allows space for that anticipation to build in a way that really enriches the experience. And this is true of our sex life. So that because it's important, we make space for it in regular intervals within our day and within our week. And so that we're making space to connect. Not that it's rigid and we can't rearrange that, and we can't, any more than, if we need to move dinner up or back.
right.
Or,
if the kids have a sport event and things move around.
Or, your husband goes to the grocery store and they were out of a key ingredient that you needed. And so I'll have to make it for you later in the week when they get it in. There's not a rigid thing, but instead it's because it matters and it's important, we're intentional about it and planning and making space. And we look forward to that time together, right? And this is especially key for women. And that one of the things that we know from research and have found about women and their sexuality, that when they think about a sexual experience and an upcoming sexual experience, your body actually begins to prepare for that experience in advance of it. That it increases your enjoyment of that experience because your body's already preparing for that experience before it arrives. And so the knowing about the experience allows you to anticipate and to fantasize and to think about that experience in a way that makes, to use the food analogy, your mouth water, kind of anticipation of the experience together. And so that can be a really fun and playful, flirtatious thing throughout the day, and texting back and forth, or, thinking about date night, or, just that fun, playful banter between husband and wife around anticipating sharing that joy together.
Yeah. I love the idea of just thinking about it less as like a rigid schedule and more as just intentionality for something that is important and should be important and is just vital to our connection as a husband and wife. So last question before we kind of finish up, but to the people who are listening, the people who are watching, who are maybe struggling, couples that feel very disconnected and are so busy, what's a word of advice that you as a counselor, as a sex therapist would give to them?
Yeah, I don't think that I can pull that off in a word, but we'll scrap a few words together here and see what we can do. So the first thing that I would say is, and you can follow up on other articles in this series that speak around this subject, but husbands need to know that when we're talking about not allowing busyness to encroach in, that we're talking about more than just what happens in the bedroom. Because a misconception of a husband will be like, hey, I'm making time. Like, we're here to make time. Let's get naked. This will be great. And the wife is going to be like, what about making time, like having made it home for dinner and us actually been able to have some conversation and some meaningful dialogue and connection? Like, if she doesn't feel that emotional connection and connectedness, then just because you make a window of time in the evening to get naked doesn't mean that you've made time for the relationship in a way that allows connection and pays the way for that. So kind of break out of the paradigm of just thinking about making space for sex to thinking about what making space for connecting within our relationship looks like, which lays the foundation for a healthy sex life and sexual connection. So that would be the first thing that I would say Don't kind of misunderstand what's being said here. And I'm talking to you, husband out there right now, don't even think about like weaponizing this talk and being like, Josh says we need to make time. No, 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 no. This is about us as a couple working together to make space in our relationship for connecting, including connecting sexually. So make sure it's a teamwork thing, not a guilt, shame, demand, pressure, all that kind of nonsense that doesn't help things. So there's that piece that I would say. And then there's the, let's just make, recognize the importance of it and have a conversation with one another that says, hey, you know what? I've been feeling the disconnect. I've been, missing you. I've been missing connecting physically with you. I've been missing emotional connection with you. No judgment. I'm not blaming. Can we just have a conversation about how we can make space for that? And the scheduling piece. Here's the magic formula. Everybody loves formulas. I can't give you a lot of formulas in life, but here's a little kind of magic marriage time kind of formula for you that is super practical and can be a starting place for thinking about connection, right? Daily, you need 15 or 20 minutes of each other's undivided attention. These would be minimums, right? These are all minimums. We think about watering the tomato plant. Daily, you need 15, 20 minutes of space where you're not on your phone, you're not on another device, you're not multitasking, and that you just have each other's undivided attention to connect. And for some couples, that's sitting on at the kitchen nook, the breakfast nook in the morning, having their coffee together, and that's where they connect. For others, they come home from lunch and they share lunch together, and they're eating, they're chatting, they have that connection. Maybe it's sharing a glass of wine on the swing, on the porch, their house in the evening after dinner, and they've got kids doing dishes, doing other things, and it takes some space just to be there and give each other undivided attention. Others, it's pillow talk, and they get into bed before they're completely zonked. They turn off the TV and lay down the phones and just have some time to connect and visit about life. Minimum 15, 20 minutes a day, undivided attention, right? And then weekly, you need a date night. You need a few hours a week where you have a block of time where you can get away from work, get away from kids, get away from all the other stressors and responsibilities, and just be lovers. Be friends, hang out, date like you did before you got married, right? Go do something that you enjoy together, have a shared experience, and have that in a 2 to 4 hour block of time where you can just be lovers and friends, hang out, have that connection with each other. And then quarterly, right? So once every 3 months or so, and that have an overnight where you actually have a whole day or maybe a whole weekend where you get away and are able to spend a whole day or two, without all the distractions, but just enjoying time together. So that's just some practical direction on how to carve out the time to connect and to be able to then plan regular times of connecting sexually at a frequency that feels good to both of you. In the context of caring for the relationship as a whole.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I hope that the people watching are encouraged if this is something that you and your spouse have struggled with, because I'm encouraged just listening to it and getting ideas as far as, having a date night and what does that, time, those 20 to 30 minutes look like for me and my husband right now in this season and things like that. I mean, I'm getting so many ideas. I want to sit down with Chase and talk with him about it. So
yes,
thank you for just sharing your words of wisdom, of advice. It's so good to talk with someone who just specializes in sex therapy, Christian sex therapy, with just this really awesome view of it as being very intentional and special and just a connectiveness. So thank you, Josh, for talking a little bit about that
you're
article.
welcome.
And like I said before, you guys, if you are a female, if you are a husband, go and read this series, Better Sex for Women. So good.
That's incredible. I'm just
Yes.
saying, your wife, you saying, I've been trying to think about how we can connect and have more fun together and make space, and would love to have a conversation about that. No judgment, no blaming, no attack. Just, two people who like each other trying to figure out how to grow closer together. I don't know. Chase wants to have that conversation with you. How do you feel about that, Tori?
I mean, yeah, like I think that should be an open conversation that we can have. And I think that these articles are a good way to get there, right? They're a good way to just kind of open that conversation. Like, hey, I was reading this article that Josh wrote and it really inspired me to ask you about this,
Totally. You can definitely name drop and use as leverage to kind of springboard.
Josh sent me here. I love it. Awesome. Okay, well, let's get into the next segment of My Counselor Live. This is our trending topic, and what a trending topic it is. First episode of 2021. So what do you think that people are looking at right now? What are people Googling? Obviously, New Year's resolutions, New Year's resolution ideas. Do New Year's resolutions work? New Year's resolution schedule for working out, all of this stuff, right? So let's talk about it for a few minutes, Josh. So first of all, I mean, what is a New Year's resolution? And is it like realistic? Like, can we really hold to that?
Yeah, New Year's resolutions are great ideas and probably are not going to go as planned.
I'm pretty sure every year I make the resolution that I'm going to work out consistently. And every year around December, I say, I didn't work out consistently. I'm going to do it again.
Why is that? That's it's like a perennial New Year's
well, just try
right?
again this year.
That's right. Lots of practice setting that resolution.
Someday I think it'll stick.
Right. That's right. So I think New Year's resolutions are a fabulous idea. And I like that they reflect a intentionality about our life, right? That we want to pause and have moments of reflection where we step back and we kind of reflect on where we're at, where we're going, where we prayerfully consider what the Lord would have for us in a given season of our life. And while that doesn't have to happen at the new year by any means, that's a built-in kind of season within life that it kind of spurs or prompts that kind of reflection. And I think that's so wise for us to make space for that kind of reflection in our life. And so I would totally encourage everybody to carve out, make some space. You can totally do it as a couples exercise also, and individually, and just be able to go, hey, what are your reflections on the last year? What are the things that you're celebrating? What are the things you're excited about? The accomplishments of this year. As we look into the coming year, what are the things that are on your heart, on your mind to grow in, to be intentional about, to focus on, and to be prayerful about in this coming year? That's a beautiful way to connect with your spouse in a very healthy spiritual discipline and practice as an individual, to be reflective in that way and to set some goals around that.
Right. Yeah. And, you touched on it, but obviously, we don't have to wait until the start of the new year to reflect and make those goals. I have a friend who she and her husband kind of quarterly kind of sit down and talk through, okay, we had some goals at the beginning of the year. Now it's March. Now it's April. How are things looking? What do we want to set moving forward? And it's kind of a cool conversation to have, throughout the year, just to kind of hold each other accountable, and then also just set new goals and new exciting things and all of that.
It sounds like a great conversation to have in like a weekend getaway once a quarter, where you hang out and then have some conversation, make some space for some reflective conversations like that. Yeah. I like it. I think it's great. And I think it not only helps us refocus on the goals that we've had in a way that helps to increase the likelihood of us actually making meaningful progress towards them, but it also communicates a flexibility around those things, right? That as we get into the end of first quarter, we get into the summer, and we kind of had these goals. Are those still really our goals? And that, or has life changed? like a lot of people had things, planned in January of 2020, and and then and it was like, okay, that's out the window. Maybe we should just have no goals this year. Or maybe we should adjust kind of based on the realities that how life changes, and have some flexibility in that. So it creates a great space to not have judgment, not have shame, not have rigidity around our resolutions or goals, but instead allow them to be fluid and flexible and adaptable to life's changing presence, and to be able to make them relational, because every research study around New Year's resolutions will tell you that if you gotta have any chance of being successful and actually carrying that through, you're not going to do it in isolation. Like, the best way to actually make meaningful progress towards a goal is to share it with one or more people who are close to you, and to have conversations about it, and allow that to naturally create some accountability, and to help bring it up in conversation in a way that keeps it out in front of us. And maybe even recruit someone to be in that with you, that's like, yeah, I'd like that too for my life. And maybe together we can kind of have conversations about that help spur us on to achieving those things.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I think you covered it. That's so cool. You guys, if you're watching and you have suggestions or something that maybe you and your spouse do, as far as New Year's resolutions go, maybe like new goals for the new year, put them in the comments. Like, let's all share, kind of swap stories. What do we do? What do you do? Because I just think it's neat to talk about. And I would say there's not a right way to do it. We're all so different. We all have different dreams, different goals. There's not a right way to do it. So I'd love to know what the people watching do. So go ahead and put that in the comments if you're watching and have something maybe different, or an idea, maybe something you want to do this year. So
I love
yeah,
that we can share with one another the things that we've learned. And there's no one knows everything. And all of us bring our own unique experiences and different stuff. And so it's so cool for us to be able to share those things, use social media, use comments, use things like that to be able to share notes on life hacks that can really help us all. So I appreciate that, and everybody that makes the effort to share in that space.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Your thoughts, your ideas, suggestions, they're welcome here. We definitely want to hear that from you. So we're going to jump into our next portion, which is the Q&A. This is your part. So people watching, this is where we bring you into the show and answer your questions that you've sent in, whether it be in a comment, in our inbox on Facebook, or online at MyCounselor.Online/ask. We love getting your questions. I get so excited when we get a question sent in, and it goes right on to be asked in a future episode. And we just love it. So if you think of a question as we're talking, or if you have one in mind, go ahead and send that in. Like I said, it's MyCounselor.Online/ask, and you can submit a question to us for a future episode. But right now, I'm going to get into a few questions. And
I want to jump in just to say, me too, Tori, that really, you may wonder if you're watching this going, yeah, do they really want to answer our questions? And
yeah, we do.
I really do. And that it's for every question that is submitted, by an individual, there are hundreds and hundreds of others that have the same question, the same thought, and either didn't stir up the courage to be able to submit the question, or didn't think to ask the question in this forum. And so your questions really do not only help you, but they really help a lot of other folks as well. And for me, there's a limit of how many clients that I can have and sit with and care for. And the need out there is so much larger than we can engage in therapy alone. And so part of why we do this is really wanting to get those things that can be helpful to you out there for you. And the Q&As and the questions are a great way for us to do that. So thank you for those that have taken the time to submit a question. And it really is my honor to get to take time and speak to those things.
For sure, for sure. I think that's a really cool thing about this community and about the way that we're able to connect over social media right now is exactly what you just said, that we've gotten messages before saying, Josh said this in a previous episode and it spoke to me. I mean, and it wasn't even their question, it was someone else's question. So definitely don't be afraid to speak up, voice those questions if you have them, because someone else who's watching might be wondering the same thing. So speaking of that, the first question I want to ask, I think, is one that probably a lot of husbands struggle with. And so this one says, my wife doesn't seem to have a desire to have sex with me right now. And I feel like I've tried everything. I want to give up. Any encouragement for me in this?
Yes, you're not the only one. And you're not the only one that's there right now. You're not the only one that's ever been there. And there is a pathway forward, not just for you, but for everybody else that has been in that space. And when you're feeling discouraged and like you've tried everything, all having tried everything means is that you've tried everything that you know to try. If you knew something else to try, you would try it. But in humility, let's recognize that there's lots of things that I don't know. And just because I haven't thought of it and I haven't therefore tried it because I thought of it, doesn't mean that no one has thought of any other ways forward. And so being able to go, listen, I've exhausted my resources. Now's the time that I really need to turn to others and invite others into the circle with me who can kind of share perspective that I don't have, because we can't see our own blind spots, right? Nobody. I can't see my own blind spots. You can't see your own blind spots. I have a therapist that I work with that helps me see my blind spots, and that Cassie and I engage that help us see our blind spots and help us grow and find it very helpful in our relationship. And millions of other couples have found the same to be true as well. And so I would encourage you, when you've reached the end of your resources, the end of your ideas about how to navigate the situation, it's time to reach out for some help. And I hear you doing part of that here, right? And going, what do I do? I've reached the end of my rope. And I just want to say, I appreciate the courage that it takes to ask the question, to put it out there, and to reach out for help. And I want to encourage you to follow that, to allow that bravery, that courage to lead to the next step of reaching out and maybe picking up a book like Restoring the Pleasure by Cliff and Joyce Penner, or Celebration of Sex by Doug Rosenau, and being able to see what others have written and talked about around the subject matter. There's healthy sex podcasts that are out there that can talk around topics of sexuality that can shed ideas and thoughts that maybe haven't come to your way of thinking. Cliff Penner has a great book called The Married Man's Guide to Sex, and that's a great sex, and has lots of things that are common difficulties that men have run into, and can be a source of direction for you. Or you can reach out to our practice and get connected with somebody that's a counselor and can help ask questions, engage you and your spouse, and maybe try to identify what it is that you're tripping over that you don't know that you're tripping over, that could really be helpful if addressed to reach the goals that you have. So be encouraged. There's more help available than you're aware of, and keep looking for it. Keep seeking it out. You'll find it.
Yeah, I think that's such great advice. And like you said at the beginning, like that person is not alone. I mean, I feel like I've heard the same maybe thing from my husband before. Hey, I feel like you don't have the desire to have sex with me. What am I doing wrong? And like things like that. I mean, I just feel like this is normal, it's common. Maybe not normal,
Yes.
but it is common, and maybe is kind of typical of most marriages. I mean, it just happens. We were just talking about it earlier, just, busyness and all of these things that can take time away from that relationship.
Yes.
Yeah, so good. Okay, well, that's a great, great answer. And we have just time for one more question, which actually this question goes back to a previous episode. Like I said, sometimes people watch an episode, where you're answering another question and they have one that they come up with. So this person said, Josh mentioned that as girls develop, they can feel unsafe with their body changing, etc. How would you talk with your kids and teens as they go about developing so that they do feel safe in their body and the developmental changes while still helping them to know to protect themselves?
Yes, good question. Great question. Thank you, parent, who's submitting it and thinking about your kiddos and wanting to figure out how to help them navigate situations. You're already doing an awesome job. I know that because of your intentionality and your mindfulness, even to be paying attention to a video or podcast like this, and for your active engagement of kind of looking for more help. So keep it up. I would say that one of the best things that we can do is talk about it frequently, like all the time, ad nauseum, to our kids roll their eyes and they're like, not more talking about it, because silence is inherently shaming. That all you have to do to wrap shame around something is not talk about it. That conveys that the subject is shameful, that the subject is not something that is okay to mention even. And when we talk about things, it helps to obliterate the shame around it and invites the dialogue and the conversation in a way that helps one feel comfortable with the subject matter and able to engage and connect, and gives permission to be able to be approached, engaged, and shared around the subject matter. And so conversation can sound as simple as like, I love to do these in the car, especially with teenagers, by the way, because they're strapped in and they can't go anywhere. Like
they're stuck. Oh, those poor kids. But also, I mean,
I know, right? They want to, like, you can ask my daughters and that, right? My teenagers that I've had at home, or my kids that are still at home, when they're sitting in the seat, they want to throw themselves out the passenger in the moving vehicle to get away from it.
Right. It's not like they can go to their room and slam the door.
Right. That's right. You're stuck. You're strapped in. Isn't that right? And so, and it's a little less awkward because they're not staring directly at each other. We're kind of, both facing forward in the engagement. And to just be able to go, hey, your body's changing. How do you feel about that? Fine. This is awkward. Why are you talking about it? I know it is awkward.
I feel like I would have responded in that. I just think back now when we talk about like talking to our teenagers about things like that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I would have cringed so hard if my mom leaned over while we were driving and said, so your body's changing. Oh my gosh. I would have like had a panic attack.
Please stop now. Tells you're right on track. If they're cringing like that, then you're right on track. That's exactly what should be happening. And it means you're talking about something, ready, that already has a sense of shame around it.
Ooh, that's good. Yeah.
And so you're right on target, right? Because shame hides. Like, no, let's not. I'm not talking about it. Let's not. And so the discomfort around it exposes the reality that there's already cultural shame that's come around it, unintentional shame messages that maybe we've sent because of our own baggage and stuff that we bring into it, messages that have come in. And so be encouraged if you see that kind of, no, please stop, don't do this to me, kind of feel, because it means, we're right on with talking about something that we need to talk about.
That's so good. I would never have even thought about that side of things. And just that there it means there's already shame around it. And how great is it that as a parent, like you can kind of be the person that breaks that shame barrier and says, hey, no, I want to talk about this with you.
Yeah. And I want to say to the parents out there that are contemplating this, that are just feel their guts squirming right now, just thinking about trying to have this hard conversation. Remember the New Year's resolutions, because it plays true here as well. Don't go it alone, and some people are going to go, wow, my spouse is just not very supportive around this sort of stuff. They're like, leave all the hard conversations to me. And I'm like on my own when it comes to this. Get a friend, get a guy friend, get a girlfriend, get, somebody that's you're in your friend circle, and like make pinky promises with each other. We're going to have the hard conversations with our kids and we can encourage each other in that. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. We got, an hour trip to the football
Like, I'll
game.
text you after
Yeah,
until
that's
you have
right.
those.
That's right. I got them alone in the car. I'm going to go for it, right? And
Oh man,
we're going to
it's
go.
like a mission.
We can role play with each other, right? Role playing is so awkward and yet so fun because it breaks the ice around these things. And we can be like, all right, you play my kid, I'll play parent. I'm going to switch, and then I'll play my kid, and you be the parent. And just it helps us say the words, and it helps us get it out in a way that helps get kind of the ice broken around it, shake off some of our nerves around it, and then kind of bolsters us in going, I can do this, and really gives us encouragement to go and have that conversation with the kiddo. And, you're talking at them as much as you are engaging with them. Like, make space for them to share whatever they're going to share, but don't feel like it's going poorly if they're just like staring blankly going, please stop talking, please stop talking, please stop talking. Like, that's okay. That's to be expected. Don't be like, I'm doing something wrong. No, that's you got a 50-50 shot that that's what's going to happen. Right?
Is there, a good way to kind of use terms and talk about this conversation? Because they even said, how do you have that conversation, but still protect them from, things that
Yes.
maybe they should be protected from at 11 or 12 years old.
Yes, but recognize this, that open dialogue with parents is the best protection there is.
That's good.
Like, open dialogue, an open path for communication around tough things is the best protection that any kid can have. Because it's in the silence, it's in the lack of communication that the world around them infills that silence and that gap, and which can be very dangerous. That when we can talk about this stuff, that in itself puts this protective shield around your kiddos. And so there's nearly nothing, there's like the line of things that you can say to your kiddo that's actually going to be harmful and destructive to them, short of shaming messages, or just crude, abusive, way out of line kinds of stuff that we would go, that's, why would any human being say that to a child of any sort, right? But that the line is way out there. Like, you can way go outside of your comfort zone and be okay. I guarantee you it doesn't match up against what they hear in the locker room, or what they overhear or in a YouTube video, or from youth group, right? Like, well, yeah, I homeschool my kid in their home and they only see me. Listen, it's out there. I guarantee that unless you are living someplace without the internet and you're in a compound in the middle of the wilderness, in which case you're not watching this video, your kiddos are exposed to things way more graphically than you as a parent are ever going to say to them. And your ability to have the conversation, open the conversation, normalize the conversation is what enables you to have voice into that space in a way that allows you to counter the other kind of craziness that's out there. So don't be afraid of saying too much or going too far. You're not going to cause your kids to have, sex when they shouldn't have sex, or with people they shouldn't have sex. Like, this idea that, I don't want to give them ideas. They have ideas. Do you remember being a kid? Like, they have hormones, they have messaging out there, they have ideas. You're not going to give them ideas and somehow ruin their life by introducing them to ideas that they hadn't thought of.
I feel like ideas today, all of these things, in technology and stuff, I mean, it's just so much more accessible than I feel like it has ever been.
Yes. So don't worry about that. You're not going to cause a problem or mess things up. You're going to make them feel uncomfortable. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You're probably going to feel more uncomfortable than they feel, unless you do some role playing with a friend ahead of time. Then you might be a little bit more chill in that and surprised at how much easier it is for you if you actually do that. But yeah, it's okay if they're silent. You can talk at them and just say, hey, I want you to know this is important. It's awkward for me. It's awkward for you. It's why I'm bringing it up. I'm going to talk about it a lot because it's important that we be able to talk about these things. And the less you talk to me about it, probably the more I'm going to have to talk about it. And so, we can make this easier on each other by actually having some dialogue here. What do you say? We can kind of there's no sense and there's no reason not to blackmail your children in that way. And be like, so if I don't talk about it, we got to talk about it more. Ah, ah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, so good. I think that that is such great advice. I especially love just the piece about, you know, by talking to them, by being honest and real with them, you know, you are protecting them.
Yeah,
Because if they're not going to learn it from you, they're going to learn it from something else or someone
totally,
else that they
totally.
shouldn't. And so love that. I just think that's awesome. So hopefully that encouraged the mama who asked this question, because I mean, it's hard. Like, that is a hard situation. And I'm not a parent. But I feel like whenever we talk about parenting things, I just kind of file things away and I'm like, this is good to know. This is good to remember for the future. Awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, it's applicable to everybody, and that
Yeah.
is, either you're following a way for the future, or you got nieces, nephews, you've got those that you work with in youth group, you have, people around your life. And I'm not saying you have to be an evangelist and like make it your mission to talk to every kid you can find. That'd be creepy. About their body and puberty and sex and life and that sort of thing. But you can always be a safe person who's comfortable to talk about it in a way that God uses you, in a way that's helpful to people that you never would have imagined that He would use you in that way with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such good advice too. I didn't even think about it from the perspective of being, a youth leader or an educator, being that safe
Mhm.
person that a student or a kid feels like they can come to and say, "Hey, someone said this. What does this mean? Like, am I
Mhm.
doing something wrong by doing this?" I think it's just great to kind of open up that with, your leaders in your life, right?
Yeah.
Be
I
a
think
safe.
it's useful, if um, for people that you have a relationship with, right?
Right.
Like I would say for you, Tori, and that, friends, family friends, church friends, people that you have a relationship with. If you're going to have a teenager over at your house and that, and to be able to say, something like that to a mom that you have a relationship that says, hey, if sex comes up, are uncomfortable if
Right.
have a conversation about that? I don't know that it will. I'm not like out to have that, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, in a middle schooler or an adolescent's life, that there's because of the discomfort that can be around having that conversation with parents, a family friend or somebody who's closer in age or somebody that they look up to that's not their parent, and is way cooler than their parent, they might feel more comfortable kind of having that conversation with or talking about those things around. And so you can totally have voice and opportunity to speak into those things in people's lives, kids' lives. They're not even your own kids, but are in the circle of kids that you care about and that are, part of families that you are connected with and love, and have seen lots of those conversations take place. I know Cassie has had lots of kids conversations with different young teens, middle schoolers that were hanging out at the house for one reason or another. And they just start talking to her about, what's going on in their life and whatnot. And just because she makes it comfortable and easy to talk about, they start talking about thoughts that they have around those things. And it becomes an opportunity to speak that life into those spaces. So even though you don't have kids, Tori, I suspect that there's opportunities that God might bring along your path where you can use what you're learning here as a way to be a blessing to those kids and part of their family.
Oh, for sure. I appreciate that encouragement. And I hope that other people are encouraged too, if they're in the same boat as me, maybe not having that conversation with their own kids, but kind of being that safe person for other kids. So, yeah, with that, we're going to kind of close this down. But this has just been such a fun episode. And Josh, I just love getting to have you on the show. The things that you are able to speak into are just always so fascinating to me. You just have so much wisdom around so many different things, and are able to speak to so many different people, husbands, wives, parents, all of these things. So I appreciate you just sitting down with us and sharing your heart. And before we finish up, what maybe word of encouragement first of the new year, would you give to the people watching about, the new year, about 2021?
Well, I want to say just likewise, Tori, it's fun hanging out with you. I appreciate what you do each week and bringing these topics forward and engaging the questions. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate it very much. Enjoy our time together. And I just, want to say a blessing over those that would be watching that to start out this new year, inviting God's grace and his favor into our life and his wisdom and direction. So let's do that.
Yeah.
Father, we give you thanks that you are worthy of our praise and our worship. And as we start out this year, we just want to humbly bring our heart before you. And we want to invite you into this season of reflection and planning of the upcoming year. And we want to declare our hope and our confidence are found in you. And we want to seek your face and invite you to show us the things that are your priorities for this year. Right? Lord, help us rearrange and be humble and malleable with the things that we think are important to realign them with the things that are important to you, Father, that we would be mindful of those things, that we keep them out in front of us, and that we would be dependent on you to empower us by your Spirit to do what we're incapable of doing on our own. Lord, but that by your Spirit, you can empower us to overcome obstacles and challenges and to accomplish all that you have planned for us and desire for us. So we just give you thanks for that. Pray for your favor and your blessing and your encouragement and your joy in the life of every person who's engaging this and watching this video in this coming year, Father. And we'll give you the praise and the glory and the thanks in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much for that, Josh. And thank you guys for tuning in and really just engaging with us for this time that we have. And we will be back next week. I'll be back with another one of the amazing counselors on our team for another episode of My Counselor Live. So excited to carry My Counselor Live into 2021. So thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next week.